Hello. Yeah. So let's start. Oh, so welcome everybody. So today's my talk is document your code. It's a very generic talk. I'll go ahead and discuss about why documentation is necessary and things like how you can do it. So basically two parts of the whole talk. So to begin with, I should introduce myself. I am, you can say, Superman who can fly around inside the house till now, not much more. And other than this, I contribute to various free software projects. I'm a Fedora project ambassador. I maintain packages in Fedora. I like Python. I do work on various Python projects. So let's go to the main items. So the key point is everyone reads documentation. So if I ask you, like, the first one thing, like, if you have any questions, please ask me now. I mean, you can stop me and just ask the question. So how many of you actually read any documentation while doing any project or using anything? Okay, it's actually everyone here. So you already know why you read the documentation. Then the question comes, can people just answer something why you read? Anyone in the front row? To understand code, okay. Any other points why you read the documentation? Anyone? Okay, to get examples of the library we are going to use. Then we already have user guides to understand how we are going to use a particular application. We go and look for short tutorials, things. So basically documentation is communication. Documentation is the way to communicate to your users, to the people who are going to use your code or application. Good code and good documentation, they go hand by hand, and they both get better. They both make each other better when we have good code and good documentation. So, for example, if you are a library author, so any language, anything, you are writing a library or module which can be used by someone else, what do? You write documentation for your library so that the users of your library can actually go read the documentation, understand how to use it in a better way, and then go ahead and use it. Say you are a application developer, so you want your new users to come in, understand how easy to use your application and do the exact thing it's supposed to do. So you'll write more documentation. So, and I also have a point, like documentation is actually good code. So we all know about test-driven development, where you write tests before you code, correct? In the same way, we sometimes call documentation-driven development, where you try to write the documentation and see how the code actually behaves. So many times it happens to me, I know it happens to many other upstream authors, that you write some code and then you try to document for the same API, and then you figure out the way you actually thought while writing the code is completely crap compared to how the user looks at the same document. So those are the basic cases where you see how the documentation and the good code matter works. So this image actually talks about the same thing. So when it is as just a good code, we do the left hand side thing, and when we actually finish up writing the code, we go ahead and try to document our own code. Most of the times we go into the right side of the image and we keep looking at like why I did that. We don't need that. That was a completely stupid idea, I can understand now. So it just starts from there. Who should do it? I mean, why documentation is for whom? So if you are a module, a library author, or even a project upstream, the developers are the best person to start any documentation. You will find that many projects keep talking about new contributors, that you come over, you can start contributing with the documentation. But that may not be a very good idea, because when someone new totally comes into a project, he or she may not know about the internals of the project. For example, how an API call is supposed to be used, or say if they press a particular button, what exactly is going on in the behind. That thing might crash the whole system. That thing, if it is on network, say if you are on a GPRS, it might download 10 MB of data. But the normal user, the new contributor, cannot decide all those details at the very beginning. So it's always better the documentation should be started by the upstream developers. We already have some very big examples in the same way. I will take these examples. So if you see the Qt documentation, if you see KDE documentation, or even say Django, it's a Python project, Django documentation, you will find that the upstream developers, the guy who actually wrote those classes, they only write the documentation for the same API. Django, I know for sure, like in Django, you cannot submit a patch without the documentation update. So you say you are changing anything in any API, or you are adding a new API, any call details, you should submit the documentation patch with your normal code patch. So that makes sure that your documentation is always updated. That makes sure that the API you are writing, you are yourself is looking at it as a user's point of view and trying to figure out how they are going to use. That's also useful. So what to document? So if you see, most cases we generally look for the tutorials. Tutorials are the kind of documents which can be read within 30 minutes, where people just want to get an idea how the things actually work, may it be library or an application. They just want to see some quick examples which they can try out within that 30 minutes time. And instead of tutorial, if they get a complete user guide which is like 400 pages long, you need a couple of days to actually read and figure out, they will not try to come back to your project. They will try to go move on to the next one. If you are a library author or a developer, the biggest thing is to make sure to document all your publicly available API. The point is about publicly available API. If you have say 10 functions, you just documented 5 of them, the rest 5 people really don't know. Do you really think that if people will come back, read the source code, figure out how to use the document thing? No. Or say you have 5 internal functions which the users shouldn't know at all, but you thought, okay, it's very nice to document them in the same place and actually make it public. Then you can write at many places as you want, that saying, no, this is not to be used, this is something very bad. But you will still find people will use those APIs and they will come back and tell you, I was using this API and it's crashing my application, or you actually changed this thing, it's not there anymore. Again, we heard the same kind of examples in the Django community. There were APIs which are happily documented very nicely, and people thought that this is something we can already use. Now they cannot move those APIs because there are so many people already dependent on those internal API. They just can't move. There is one thing called FAQ, everyone knows. So if anyone actually wrote an FAQ for any other project, anyone there? Anybody wrote any FAQ for any other project? So when we talk with the other developers, like how you create your FAQ, most cases people just start writing the questions they have in their mind and they just keep updating that one only. But a better way is always keep listening to the questions comes from your users. And you don't have to fill it up at the beginning. It can be empty at the starting. So you get your first question, you add it up. The FAQ should slowly, something which should increase slowly, but having the questions only which matters, which people really frequently ask, not every other question that comes on a developer's mind or say a QA guy's mind. Then comes obviously the bigger user documentation, mostly for say any application, how to use the application, how to do the configuration and things. In the same way, like proper how-tos. So the difference between the how-tos and tutorials, how-tos are in-depth. You have to spend really good time on the how-tos, and it will explain you all the small details, and then do how to go ahead to do the things for that particular project. So again, in the tutorials should give you the users as a feeling, like how to go ahead, and the how to documentation should give you in-depth knowledge. So many projects, they actually mix up the things. So when they create tutorial links, the tutorial links are actually how-tos, which are in-depth, big, and there are not enough short tutorials which just people can have a look, and that, like, go ahead. One thing I forgot to mention here is about like small coding snippets. Like for the library API, it's actually part of tutorial, but many projects, like you can go to something like Vala's documentation and see, like they have separate sections where they have small snippets explaining how to say access an XML document, do JSON, or connect to a network. But those are very small snippets, but that actually helps a lot to the new users to do those small works, but they already can find it on the net. And if we look beyond this, then obviously if you are starting a new project and things, people will start asking how to document, like where, how, which tools. Basically they don't matter. You can use whichever tools is fitted for your particular, say, language or environment, as long as the users can reach to your document in a simple way, let's say as few clicks as possible, it will be good for them. My talk is actually based on Python, the way we do in the Python world. So I'll be talking mostly about these two things, restructured text and Sphinx project. So this is a small tutorial we have, I wrote for few students. This is a summer training. So you can go to that URL and see the RST tutorial. So the whole tutorial, you can finish it up within half an hour. It's very simple. I'm not going to go details of RST in this talk. I'll try to show you some example code and like how to do the things. So the next part, I will take 3 examples. So there was a small code which I started writing long time back. Was a small, I just give a name for the demo. PyPress is basically a Python module to connect to our WordPress and do basic create blogs, edit blogs, and like get categories, add a category title. So a very small API, and I will see how we can actually improve the code through documentation and how to go ahead with this. So the first release, the PyPress 1, which I wrote like when I started learning Python at the very beginning. I never knew how to do documentation or anything. By the way, how many of you actually knows Python already? Enough. And how many of you have already used Sphinx? Okay, that's good. And one day, so you can see already see there is one issue in that the name of the file started with a capital letter, which I was not supposed to. At that time, I just wrote it. There was no documentation. There is only a README file saying if you want to. I guess I have the README file here. Yeah. So that was the documentation, only documentation I had that time. So what it says, read the source to find out. So do you think people will actually do that? No, but that time I had no clue, and I was thinking, yeah, no, people will actually go read my source and figure out how to use this function. So again, if you look at the doc strings, they don't explain much. So I just wrote up like something like a post the content. What is the content? Where to post? And how? What's going on? Nothing. I just wrote post the content, and edit content, and obviously copy paste errors. So if you see here, get last port, guest entries, I tried to copy paste that time and both have the same document docs tree. So doesn't make any sense, correct? So to start with this, we can use a project called Sphinx, which can help you to do documentation. It can be a technical documentation. People use Sphinx to create other kinds, user guides, how-tos, tutorials, everything. So we'll see a second version of the same code where we use the Sphinx, we updated the doc strings in a proper way so that we can use it from the Sphinx. So now in the same source code, I created a directory called docs. Where is that pointer? Docs. And I updated my code also while doing the documentation. So I actually went through each of the function calls and figured out how to write a better doc string maybe for that. So here you go. So now if you read the documentation, you will understand it makes, I think, a little bit more sense. I'm adding up notes saying what should be done while creating the document, or even say for a post function, I'm actually explaining what are the arguments there, what type of arguments, what this thing will particularly return. Same way I added documentation doc strings to each of the other functions or methods, you can say. So I created a directory called docs, and after going into the docs directory, you can use something as this particular command. You can try it out if you have Sphinx installed on your system. Just try in an empty directory. Just use this. It will ask you a couple of questions like what is the name of the project, what is the release number, the copyright information, what kind of it contains few of the plugins, which all plugins you want. It will ask you if you need a make file and a Windows file, bat file also. Because most of my projects are on Linux, I just use the make file only. So Sphinx uses a restructured text format. So this is the index file. It will get automatically created if you do the Sphinx quick start. I just added up a little bit here. I just explained what is that pipe trace. I wrote something like auto class. So here I am just saying that just explain this class. If you use Java docs, it's almost exactly like the same. It takes out the doc string from your definition and creates the documented out from it. And you are just supposed to call make HTML, make PDF based on what you want the output. So this is what the output looks like. Right? Yeah. So it extracts that information which I wrote as a doc string in my Python project module and writes it like this. So you can see the parameters are properly now marked. Things took care on how they should look like, what should be the loop, the returns. If you see, I wrote that dot note in RST that to mark out that this is a particular note you should look at. So all those things are taken care by Sphinx. So Sphinx, it's not only for Python. You can use it for any other programming languages also. So if you go to its Sphinx site, so you'll find the other languages and how to use them. You already get say something like, oh, this will not work. I need to click from a web server. So there is a quick search and other things, options will automatically get updated, and it will, from the release number and the project name, it will add these things on your project document. But it still looks ugly, correct? We just showing up the whole the class document on the middle, on the front page. So we can improve it a bit more, add up like installation, add up details about the project, what are the dependencies and things. To do so, I'll go back to the third iteration of the code. So now I split up the index into different sections like user guide and give links to the some files, so and like API documentation. So we'll see these three things: user, intro, redis, and install. These are basically three files inside the user directory in the docs folder. So if I open, say, install.rst, so this particular file explains about the installation, how you can install the project using pip, what are the dependencies, how to get the source code from GitHub and details. And in the API.rst, here I actually put that particular API documentation where people who are only interested to know the API more, they will click this link and come to read about the API documentation. So if I run just make HTML, this is what the output looks like. So I have proper sections like say installation, introduction. If I go to the classes, the API, now this contains the API. So while using Sphinx, this is basically it. Like what you need to do is just start the Sphinx project using Sphinx Quick Start. If you need any examples or you want to know how to do some particular way, you can always look back all other projects which are using Sphinx already. To find out more projects or people, other people who are already using Sphinx for their documentation, you should check this particular site, readthedocs.org. So this is a publicly available site for all the open source projects. So you can just, if you have your source code say in GitHub, you can import this into Read the Docs. It can schedule your builds. You can actually start your hook from the GitHub, so that every time you push your any changes, it will rebuild the documentation and you will see it live. So this is the Read the Docs website. So big projects including Django, they all use Read the Docs in the backend to host their documentation. So if you actually log in, go to the dashboard and click on the import. This is the form you will find to import a new project. So you just need to add up the name, the repo, the Git URL, and project URL and few other details if you want to fill up. After that, I already did this for my a project called Retask. So after doing this, what you will get something like this. If you see the URL, it's retask.readthedocs.org. So your project name .readthedocs.org, and this will automatically keep building your Sphinx documentation, your project documentation. If you have different tags, you can find the tags also down. You can click on the old. If anyone wants to know about any old releases, they will go there. They can click. So you don't have to worry about anything on the hosting side of your documentation. People can always go to the site and get your documentation from there. By the way, if you see this document and say this, they both are things, but used a different theme. So it means Sphinx supports theming, and you can actually use any other themes if you don't like the default look and feel. So in this case, I used from the request library the theme, and I think that's taken from the Flask, correct?
Variation on Flask. Flask uses Garamond. This one is not Garamond.
Yeah. So the good easy way is to just find out the theme you want to use and just make the changes. Keep the following the license policy obviously, and then keep using it.
Kushal, I have a question for you.
Yeah.
So when you make an account and read the docs and host a project there, can someone else edit the project? Like for instance, if I have a shared project that I'm working on with someone else, okay, and I went to read the docs and added it on my account. Now, can I share the project with someone else and let them edit it?
Last time I checked, if I remember correctly, no.
So
the guy who is owner, I mean, I'm not sure because most of the projects I found only one person is handling the documentation side.
Right.
So I still, I have to see the document if there is any way to do it. I don't know. I should say. So the same thing actually happened. So I was writing the updating the document for Redis-Pi. I found already one person did it, and there was no way to actually anyone else other than him to update that project.
The reason I'm asking this is this becomes a very common concern that you start working on a project and then you're the maintainer of the documentation and the code, and eventually it becomes big enough that you have someone dedicated to doing documentation, but now your read the docs account has to be given up to him. Okay? Because you can't transfer a project to another owner, as far as I can make out.
Yeah, so that's what I recall. So the one good thing was that most of the document, in read the docs, once you configured your project, generally people don't have to touch much.
Right.
From
you
their side.
just put a GitHub hook and
GitHub hook and keep doing. Someone else can take care of the commits and doing the things from there. And even if you want, the IRC channel for read the docs is read the docs. So go there.
Go there and ask.
Just go there and actually the admins are pretty active. So if you go anytime on the day, there you find people which will actually help you how to do the things properly on the document that site. And if you are a Python contributor or using Python somehow, you will find most of the projects they are slowly moving into their whole documentation into read the docs.
Okay.
And you can actually do even URL mapping so that you can host the thing on the read the docs and use it from your site.
Have you figured out how to do this with GitHub itself? How do you make GitHub pages rebuild automatically from Sphinx? So like read the docs has a GitHub hook.
Yeah.
So it's very easy. The moment you commit something, read the docs rebuilds.
Yes.
Can you do that with GitHub pages itself?
I never used the GitHub pages yet.
Because GitHub pages are kind of easier to maintain if you are say an individual maintaining a bunch of related libraries or an organization.
Okay.
So with read the docs, each one becomes project.readthedocs.
Separate, yes.
Exactly. So it's very hard to find related projects on read the docs.
Okay.
Whereas with GitHub, it'll be profile.github.com/project name.
Yep.
And your profile.github.com, the landing page itself can be a link to all the documentation of all the projects you maintain.
Yes.
Okay, and those individually. So which is why I like the GitHub approach a little bit better. It's just that I can't figure out how to do GitHub rebuild automatically without basically running a script on my own computer
and then
does it. Exactly, and that's painful.
Yeah, that's something like, as I said that I never looked into GitHub pages yet. I just saw, I actually went through your pages, HasGit pages only, to figure out how to use, how they look like and things, but I never used myself. So that might be a good idea. Maybe a good project for anyone if somebody is starting up with Python, like figure out how to do this. There will be already people who wants to use it here. Outside of the Python world, I want to talk about another project called Publican. In case Google will. So this project is being used internally in Red Hat and also by all the documentation in Fedora. So this is this is written using Java and Perl. Actually, Java part I shouldn't say. It's written basically lots of Perl scripts and using different backends to create again HTML, PDF, and different kinds of output. It can help you to create a full website based on your documentation. The Publican is very good if you're writing something, say a book or a website which needs to be translated into other languages also. So it can help take care of your ITN work, and it can help you to create .po files or pot files so that other people can come in and start translating your work. I used it still now only in one project. I wrote a Python book. So this is a very small Python book written using Publican. So you can say you can think about it as a user guide for your project, which is basically Publican uses docbook in the behind. So you write docbook files and then they get converted into HTML or PDF. So the good thing about why I was talking about Publican, one of the really nice thing is like this, where some people just came up, they wanted to translate my book in Malayalam, and so things like this becomes very easy if you use a tool like Publican. There are a few other languages right now people are working on. I guess one of them is Chinese. I don't know what is written there, but I can guess it is correct, the guy who submitted the patches. So it's also, again, Publican can also create PDF documents for you. It looks really like fancy and nice with the theming and stuff. So you don't have to worry about anything, and you can choose your own kind of title, header images, license, and files. At first I wanted to talk about Finks mostly because I'm a Python developer. Almost all my projects are in Python. It's becomes very easy to do technical documentation on Finks, and Publican is like another level of documentation where you want that your document needs to be translated in various other languages. You at the same time you want to give it like PDF and HTML and various other outputs. You want it to be both Finks documents and Finks the code documentation is actually maintained within your source code base. You can in the same way you can maintain the Publican documentation in Git or SVN, because end of the day those are bunch of text files. So, and obviously if you are in Java, you have I think Java docs, and for Perl, Ruby, every other language we have some other tool chains which you can use. So try to figure out whichever comes on your own groove, which fits in properly, so that you can keep using it in your workflow with the minimal number of changes, and keep publish the documentation. Publishing documentation is the major idea here. So I hope this will help you to have some ideas on how you can go ahead, like what kind of tools you can use. If you have any questions, just take the questions. Anyone? Oh, someone.
Hello.
Yeah.
So actually, a lot of times we start writing the code and the code changes, right? It's very dynamic, and we change algorithms and we change our design also.
Yes.
So we never find a point in which we start writing the documentation. That's what is happened. So what do you think we should be? When should we doing it? When we commit, at the time of commit, or at this time of starting writing? I mean, what point do you think should be good to start and put some documentation?
Okay, so the question is how we should go ahead writing the documentation, because my code is changing. We are keep updating the things, we are changing the API and the thing. So I already gave one example for that. It's like Django. So if you are making any change, the documentation should also get changed. And documentation may not mean the whole things. So if we just go back, say for example this particular function. So right now you don't need to update the whole documentation. Say while the developers are actively developing any particular set of say files, or particular set of module within your project, whichever language it is, you just try to keep update documentation only for that module inside the maybe source code, in our case in Python. So say this thing will not return a list, but will return a couple of objects, list of objects maybe, not as string. So when I made the change for in that this code, I should update at least that amount of small documentation for it. So many people think that it's a good idea to first finish your whole document, whole code base and start documenting, but it doesn't work out well. So if you actually start writing the document at the moment you start writing the code, at the same time, even not, if not before, if you start it at the same time, you will understand how your code will behave or look like to a user. So it's always better to keep the both thing going at the same time. I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, thanks.
Any other question? Anyone? I guess no questions. So thanks for listening.